If you're waiting for the biggest game of the year, then wait for Cyberpunk. But if you're ready for the smallest, we've got you covered. From Obsidian Entertainment, the makers of games that are nothing like this one. This summer, strive together to thrive together. Or just feed your friend to the spiders and go solo.
Oh god. Oh, I've really done it this time. I have finally, somehow, manifested a nightmare of mine into reality. Imagine this. I am now the size of an ant, a little bigger, a little taller. Tasked with trying to survive in the most inhospitable place on this entire godforsaken planet. A middle-class family's backyard. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am talking about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids meets the Forest, this amalgamation of survival and collecting ant thoraxes is called Grounded. Now today is an incredibly special day, as it is a first for many things on my channel. It is my first non-Halo related video, and my first uploaded game review. On the menu today, we have a titular early access game that I personally have been excited for since its announcement during the XO19 event back in November 2019. And that game is Grounded. In this review, I will go over the premise of the game, the developmental history, at least as much of it as I can find, the gameplay, and my overall opinions, followed by a score. So, let us christen the ship with a bottle of our finest champagne, and hope we don't end up running agrounded. Get it? Because Grounded's the name of the game. Ships can run aground. Anyways, let us talk about Obsidian's newest IP, Grounded. As you could imagine, the premise of this game is fairly simple. You and potentially a few of your buddies, assuming you have friends unlike me, are tasked with simply surviving the backyard you are placed in. And if you choose to follow the main story, you will also figure out why and possibly how you got shrunk to the size of an ant. And maybe even how to fix your vertically challenged self. Who knows? Now, I did mention in the introduction that this game is in fact early access. So for those who do not know what that means, regardless of how self-explanatory it means the game is not done. When the game first released for early access on July 28th of 2020, the year of unspeakable events, there was one review that I cannot seem to find anywhere where the reviewer bashed the game for not having a lot of content and feeling incomplete. I'm sorry, did you miss the memo, chap? The game is still early access. Anyways, according to sources, the game has been in development since 2018, before Microsoft acquired Obsidian. The initial staff dedicated to Grounded's development consisted of 13 developers, as most of the other staff at Obsidian was working on The Outer Worlds, which is an absolutely amazing game that I love. The game is obviously still in development, and the developers have stated that they plan on using the feedback obtained from early access players to help develop the game, which is what they should be doing, and that's kind of the whole point of releasing a game in early access, don't you think? And also to raise capital, because early access games are not free. Anyways, the game is slated to release sometime in 2021, so that is something we can look forward to, alongside Halo Infinite, pretty much every other game that's going to come out in 2021. So that's cool. Apparently this early access build features about 20% of the game's main campaign, and for the amount of time I was able to sink into the game with only 20% being available, I would say we are in store for quite the experience come 2021. The development history and premise for this game are pretty short and sweet, so, that's that. You're small, survive, have fun. So, with that being said, why don't we dive into the meat and potatoes of this review and talk about the addicting, pint-sized gameplay that Grounded offers? Shall we? I think we should. When talking about and giving merit to a game, it is usually important to derive a good portion, if not most, of the criticism and praise from the gameplay, right? I mean, it is a game after all, and you're playing it, so why not? Well, while the premise of Grounded revolves around being pint-sized, the offerings, mechanics, and gameplay are anything but. The gameplay can best be summarized as being as straightforward as The Forest, but without the dark and foreboding feel. Grounded takes place in the not at all forgotten, radical, gnarly decade of the 90s, and the art style and overall feel of the game reflects that. The tiny teens you play as are certainly not your typical silent vessels for the players to hijack, but have their own personalities and quips. Imagine this: teenaged Nazi zombie characters. And you'll get the idea. The main aspects of the game that the player will be interacting with are crafting and base building, and combat, but I'll get onto that later. The crafting, much like The Forest, consists of building armor and weapons, as well as items that assist with inventory management and whatnot. But I will talk more about those kind of things when I get to the base building aspect. Your main weapons are your typical Neanderthal favorites, the axe and spear, as well as a bow made from thistle thorns that can be plucked from the thistle bush. You start out with crafting your basic stone weapons made from pebbles, or as us normal people would see, microscopic little rock sediments. However, once you have proven to those good-for-nothing ants that you are not to be trifled with, and make an example of them, you can use the dismembered parts of them as armor and weapons. I mean, have you ever wanted to wear an ant's body as armor and use its mandibles as bladed weapons? Well, today is your lucky day, now innit? Geez, I'm starting to realize that these teens are far craftier than I am, as I probably would not survive as well as they do. I'm terrible at anything outdoorsy, so there's that. Base building is rather interesting, as it also uses the same system as The Forest. With this, I mean you build the blueprint and then add the items to the blueprint as it is represented in 3D in the world. I really like this form of base building as it allows you to plan everything out before you have all the resources, and allows you to build over time while making visible progress. Essentially, you just lay out the blueprints of your base, and as you get resources, you add to it, and eventually it all comes together, rather than you having to build the specific item with all the resources at once and then place it in the world. So that's kind of the difference there. You make most of your shelter out of blades of grass, which to us normal-sized humans are tiny, weak, and frail.
I'm too weak. Don't kill me.
However, in Grounded, blades of grass are as tall and solid as tree trunks, And not like little trees, not like baby trees. I'm talking like 40-year-old big old trees. You can build things like walls, roofs, and containers or holders to hold items like extra blades of grass, dried out grass, and pretty much anything that may be taking up inventory space. You can also craft things like a dew catcher, with dew droplets being your main source of clean drinking water, and fire pits to cook up some delicious grub, amongst other things. Man, talking about eating has really got me craving some grub. Well, not literal grub, worms. Unless, again, a reoccurring theme in this video, like the forest, you also must pay attention to your little guy or gal's hunger and thirst. This system, while remarkably simple, is a major component of Grounded. Hunger can be sufficed by eating things like mushrooms, not the magic kind, you silly hooligans, fruits, and cooked insects, my favorite. The last one is almost as unappetizing as eating the cannibal natives in the forest. Yikes. Thirst is relatively simple. I mean, how hard can the concept be? You can drink from puddles of still water around the backyard, which is not a good idea at all. But, this water can make you sick and drain your hunger stat. Which, that, and also the fact that mosquitoes lay their little eggs in there. Not in the game, but IRL. Ugh, still water. No thanks. As I've stated before, it is best to drink that refreshing and most importantly, safe dew. You can find dew droplets on blades of grass or tumbling around the world like a tumbleweed in a spaghetti western flick. If you would rather not have to run around hoping you stumble upon that sweet nectar, you can build a dew catcher to have dewdrops on demand. Well, kind of. Stamina is mostly important in combat and movement, as with pretty much any game. Your stamina will deplete while running or taking a swing at those pesky ants, spiders, or anything else you feel like game ending. Stamina recharges at a pretty generous rate, so it should not be that big of a deal if you pace your swings and run in intervals. Well, I've gone over in graphic detail the gameplay. Why don't we talk about the world and the potential threats you may face on your adventure to return to normalcy? With Grounded being a game where you are so small and so frail, things that do not usually pose a threat or even get a second glance in day-to-day life have their roles altered and inflated. Obsidian took this opportunity to give a new name to the quite common phobia known as entomophobia. I think that's how it's pronounced, which is the fear of insects. There are a variety of neutral bugs that you can find roaming about. The biggest one and one of the most beneficial to have around are the ladybug. They are neutral by default but will attack if provoked, so don't go trying to pick a fight with them unless you're ready to game end it. They are also useful because you can usually follow them to a source of food, kind of like a big red wayfinder. They just kind of boom, 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 boom through the landscape. You also got the aphids and the grubs, which if you ask Timon and Pumbaa, make for a delectable little snackaroo. As with anything, when there is good, there must also be evil. In Grounded, there are some that love a hefty brawl. The apex predator of Grounded is not even an insect at all, but rather an arachnid. The spider serves as the main threat, as they will attack unprovoked and chase the player down until they ensure your swift and probably unsavory demise. There are multiple different styles of spiders in the game, like orb weavers and like jumping spiders and stuff, and I assume there will be more varieties with different stats later on, but those are the only two I can remember running into. Wolf spider, that's the other one. I remembered last minute. Anyways, ants. Ants tend not to attack unless provoked, unless they are the soldier ants, who want nothing more than to pick a fight with anything that gives them a funny look, because they're self-conscious about their looks. Come on, don't bully them. unless you want to take their mandibles and use it as a weapon, then bully them. This includes you and other insects found in the yard. They will fight anything. The most notable hostile insect that I managed to come across in my limited playtime was the stink bug. They sure love to fog up the air with their stank gas and use it to disorient the enemy, which aids them in combat. Did I also mention that it takes a metric fuck ton of paltry offensive gear you have to slay some of the predators of this game? It does not take too much to down an ant. You can even take on a few ants by yourself with some careful movement and attack planning, and if you got the right weapons. However, when it comes to the spiders and the stink bugs, you might as well turn tail and run, unless you got a vantage point with a lot of expendable weapons and ammo. They will wreck your shit and make you feel as puny as you quite literally are. You're tiny. The world itself is remarkably detailed and has a variety of different locations to scout and potentially even call home. Well, you know, remarkable for a family's backyard. You've got trees you can climb, patches of dead, dried out grass, the fresh grass you start in. I'm sure more to come as the game's development chugs along to explore, which is crucial. There are also little microscopic research stations and a hidden lab for the player to explore, which is used to figure out how and what you can craft. Because you find the items and then you scan them, and it tells you, hey, guess what you can do? You can build stuff with this. Pretty crazy, right? Obviously, I did not go over every little facet of the game in its current state, and as with any in-progress form of media, it is bound to change between the time of writing and the final release of the game. So if you are watching this video either the day after it goes live or a year after it goes live, the game is bound to be different, so keep that in mind. Now that we have a general idea of the highlights of this game in its current state, I think it's time we conclude this video and give this game a certified epic gamer rating. Yeah. Welcome to the end. This is the point in the video that a lot of people are interested in: the reviewers' complaints, praise, and overall final verdict on a game. I have to say, if you are a fan of survival games or pretty much anything made by Obsidian, you will not be disappointed. I constantly reference The Forest, which I think is a damn solid survival horror game. One thing I loved about the game was how base building, crafting, and resource management was implemented. Grounded takes a lot of inspiration from The Forest and other survival games like it, which is something I think works in the game's favor. This game is easy to pick up and get the hang of relatively quickly, and does not get stale or repetitive near as quickly as some other survival games. This early access build of the game can be maxed out in a short amount of playtime. However, within about 7 hours or so, my buddy and I pretty much did everything there is to do, and that 7 hours includes foregoing the main quest line for a good portion of time while we messed around with base building and crafting. This obviously is not indicative of the final product and is to be expected with an early access game, but I still thought I would mention it. I think in its early access state, Grounded is pretty darn badass and leaves me wanting more, which is, in this case, is a positive. It's always a good sign, really. In its current state, I would give Grounded a solid 8 out of 10. The only issue I really had was I felt like the spider and stink bug represented a sharp difficulty spike. They kill you super quick and sometimes feel impossible to take down. But apart from that, the game felt really good for early access. I cannot wait to see what Obsidian has up their sleeves for this game and the endless possibilities that can come from it. I hope you all enjoyed this video, the first of many reviews that I decided to bestow upon you. And if you did, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. As with all my Halo videos before, I yearn for some interaction with you guys. Let me know if there's any specific game or type of content you want to see, and I will try to respond. Let's have a civil conversation. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.